Hey y'all. Today we're going to talk about how to respond when a student gets stuck on a word or just doesn't read a word. I'm sure you've experienced this before, and I know the temptation can often be to provide students with the word. But if we do this, we miss a chance for students to flex their decoding muscles, which is essential to be able to read on their own, especially multisyllabic words. So, this is the error correction ladder. You can see it here. We'll walk through it, we'll do an example and talk about some exceptions. But the first thing is just give students wait time. And I would say this is true for any question. We need to give students a chance to answer before we jump in to rescue them right away. So maybe like 3 seconds. Count in your brain as they're struggling with a word and let them struggle with it a little bit. After that, the next step would just be to prompt them. So you're still not coaching, you're just saying, look at the full word. This is another chance for them to wait and think about what they're reading. If they thought they read it correctly, this could also sound like try that word again. After that, we can jump into a little more coaching. So we might say, what part of this is familiar? And they may highlight a part, they may give you a part of the word and then help them. Then they can try to read the rest of the word. If they're still struggling there, we might ask them to break the word into parts so they could physically do this themselves. This also might be a time if they're really still stuck that you break down the word for them. Once they've broken it into pieces and they've got the pieces, we'd ask them to blend the word together. And then, if it's in a passage, we'd have them reread the sentence. So they're getting a couple of chances to read that word correctly. There's going to be some variety here depending on where in the process students catch on, right? So if you ask them what part is familiar and they get it, go ahead and have them reread the sentence and move on. If they're really getting frustrated, if they're really getting stuck, again, we might give them some supports like breaking down the word for them, highlighting things, stuff like that. So let's look at one. Okay. So say this is the sentence. Oops, sorry, y'all. Say the sentence is, then we found some pine cones, and they're getting stuck on the word pine cones. So if they said, and we found some pine, I'm waiting in my head. One, two, three. Okay, look at the full word. Again, waiting for the student. I might ask them what part is familiar. Maybe they say cones is familiar, right? So I'd say, okay, let's look at the beginning of the word and then put it together. But if there's not a part that's familiar, I might ask them to break it down, or I'd show them where they can break it down themselves and then say, let's try these parts. Okay. Then, once they've been able to say pine and cones, we'd say blended together, pine cones, and reread the sentence. Then we found some pine cones. Again, lots of variability here, right? You might need to remind them of the sticky E. You might even, if they're really stuck, you might say, okay, I'm going to read the parts and I want you to blend it together. Pine cones. What's the word? Pine cones. Right. The ultimate goal, though, is them practicing the word correctly. I think it's a little bit of hyperbole to say we never bail a student out. They always have to figure it out, right? If they're really getting stuck and frustrated, we want to make sure that they're successful by the end of this. But our default should always be to have a student work with the word and figure it out themselves. Even if in the end you give the word to the student, make sure they're rereading it. If you're worried about pacing, one thing I would say it's about quantity of time, not necessarily quantity of words read when they're practicing. If you're doing a reading passage, one of your students runs through the whole thing in a minute, that's great. They had a chance to practice their fluency. If you had a student who takes that 1 minute to get through one sentence, that's also great, especially if they're getting time to work with words, practice with sounds they're struggling with, right? All these are opportunities for them to flex those reading muscles. The quantity and quality of time that they're spending with that sentence, trying to figure out how they read those words or how to read those words is absolutely key. So happy reading this week. Let me know if there's topics that you all would like to see covered in the future.